I'd just like to talk for a moment about why I think the struggle exists and that there are several failures that contribute to the struggle that administrators need to own. First of all, the failure of having the proper perspective. I learned my first day in healthcare administration in 1983 that as much as an administrator might like to admit a patient, we don't have that privilege and we don't get to fulfill that very important role. Administrators don't admit, doctors do. And so I think sometimes administrators forget that the only reason that the patients are in our hospitals and our facilities is because physicians wrote an order and told them to go to that particular facility.
That's right.
I think there's a failure on the part of administrators to seek feedback from physicians, asking them to tell us what's broken. And therein is where administrators really need to be secure. My view, and I talk about this in Gracious Leadership, is that we need to see problems as opportunities, because as leaders, we can only fix what's broken if we know about it.
That's right.
So I made it my practice to constantly ask doctors, hey, tell me what's broken. What can we do better? And it, frankly, in the beginning, when I went to St. Anne's, I think it caught some people off guard because it's, you want to know what's broken? I said, absolutely, please tell me what's broken. Because, you know, I think at the end of the day, we all want to do the right thing to take great care of patients. But if administrators stick their heads in the sand and fail to look for that continuous opportunity to improve, and more specifically, to understand that it is the physician and the nurses who are closest to the patients, and therefore they have the best perspective about what needs to be improved.
That also speaks to a problem-solving mentality that most physicians and medical people have. We share that. We're constantly solving problems. We have to use critical thinking. And I'm just imagining if you had been an administrator in a hospital I was working in and you came and approached me, I'd be so appreciative of you doing that. And especially if there was some sincerity and some follow-up action with it, because over the years I heard a lot of lip service too. And that becomes exceptionally frustrating, I should say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more to that point. The next failure is the failure to honor the feedback. And, you know, I made it my practice to tell physicians early on that I would always seek and welcome their feedback, but for them to please understand that I might not be able to do everything that they ask, but that if I could not do what they ask, I promised that I would always tell them why. And then another thing that I discovered, this was a little bit shocking, but I think that as administrators, we fail to not only follow through, but to tell the physicians that we followed through. A real experience, I had a surgeon approach me about a problem. Actually, I was walking down the hall and say, hey, how's it going? Anything we can do better? And he gave me an example of an opportunity for improvement. And I went straight to my office, called the respective leader within the Department of Surgery, said, hey, Dr. Smith has told me about X, Y, and Z. Would you please take care of it? Absolutely, Janet, I'll do it. Well, I run into Dr. Smith a couple of weeks later in the hall and say, hey, did we get that taken care of for you? He said, no. And I was just taken aback. And I said, I'm so sorry. I'll follow up immediately. I called the person in surgery. I said, what happened? Dr. Smith said, you didn't fix the problem. And she said, Janet, I fixed it the very day you called me. I said, well, did you tell him that you fixed it? And she said, no.
A failure to communicate.
As simple as it sounds, just taking that little step, and it's about showing respect to the physician who cared enough. You asked for an opportunity for improvement. He told me. We fixed it, but we didn't tell him. So I think that they're part of the struggle is oftentimes just the absence of the little things that can make a profound difference in the relationship.
I would agree with that, and communication is always right there at the top. Just keeping that open line and being there too, showing that you care. You know, we had an administrator, we had in my career at one hospital in particular, gotten to know many administrators, but one of our guys, our CEO of our hospital, I'd see him delivering newspapers at 7 a.m, talking to the patients. And that made an impression on me versus some others who can never find them. They're never there. They're never visible. And that hurts morale. So.
Well,
Yeah.
you're right. One of the most valuable experiences I had, and this falls under the bucket of communications, which, by the way, Des, was one of my next failures, is the failure to communicate sincerely and systematically. But one of my greatest experiences was shadowing physicians, be it hospitalists, be it, putting on scrubs and going into surgery, or I shadowed emergency department physicians on the third shift. But just being able to go there and be with them and to care enough to show them that you want to see what they're experiencing in a real life situation.
Thank you so much for joining us for the discussion today. If you would like to learn more about our guest, head on over to our Patreon page, where you can access exclusive content, including the full segment of our show. Never want to miss an Inside the Doctor's Lounge clip? Be sure to click the subscribe button to our MD Coaches YouTube channel. As always, we appreciate suggestions for future show topics. Let us know what you're thinking in the comments below. And finally, special thanks to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music for the show.